the other two puppeteers operating all the other axes of movement and parts of the dinosaur they carry onboard batteries to drive them around, and I think there was an attempt to hardwire the beacons at that stage. But you can just see the other two. The madness of trying to do operating all the other things as an automated thing. We kept trying, but every time they turn around, your offset reverses and you're going the other way, and you're going mad with chapter changes and all those things. We largely came down to pan and tilt, as I say, letting everything else go. But I think it came out as a very nice final thing, and certainly did the show well. It's just closed. It's been one of the most successful tours ever created out of Australia. Yeah. They'd bump in Tuesday overnight, Tuesday night, and then there'd be a tech either on Tuesday night, or if we were running a bit behind, we'd do the tech first thing Wednesday morning and then play. So there wasn't a lot of room for error or experimentation. Once Black Tracks bedded in Tuesday night, and we were comfortable, it made a huge difference, because particularly for the poor operator who didn't have to sit there necessarily all night doing all the focused positions. The thing too, though, is that if you can't afford to have double beacons and a redundancy, which is the only way I know of to have, if one fails or for whatever reason go to the other, you have to have some focused positions, so that if it fails in any one scene, you've got a whole queue stack of how to run it without Black Tracks in that scene. But Black Tracks made an enormous difference to the efficiency of getting the rig focused, because there were it's a lot of lights to focus each night. But yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, it's a technical system.
Clock formation in your rig there.
Yeah, look, I'm very big on, when rigs are in view, they want to pay attention to their cosmetic value. Yes, they have to function. It was also very important to me on something like this that people didn't come in and look up and see something that could have been a car show, or it had to look like something, and whether that's a clock, and we're talking about the time as we went through the millennia. The original one had 27 purpose-built pods, each with 14 lanterns on it, in a sort of vertical truss with a crossbar at the top, and that looked all sort of like industrial sculpture. But of course, none of it fitted in a truck. So it was I wasn't as popular as I might have been.
On top of technology, there's always the logistical issues, isn't there?
Well, interestingly, this last one Nicholas just done, that was specific. I was specifically told it had to fit in 3 trucks. So you're down to pre-rig, and you're stacking, and you're working out where you can put things and do things. Again, you'd be surprised how often truss mount follow spots always just take up the space you don't have in a truck, at the top of the stack or something. The original one went out in 5.5, sometimes 6 trucks. and we took longer to assemble because they didn't break down and it wasn't pre-rig. It was reckless, but that was 2007. Look, I'll keeping an eye on this time. If we're fine, I'll move on. Unless there's anything that I need to cover there. What was lovely about that was that it was straight after that Dinosaurs launched. It started in the UK. That I came back to do the opening ceremony for the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, and I also, in my wild-eyed enthusiasm for the technology that I was now having fun with, has specified black tracks onto the Gold Coast. It was an economic argument, as well as I thought we could do things with. In a big stadium, you want to. There was going to be 16, say, follow spots, which is 16 people and 16 seat kills in this particular piece of plotting. That was the stadium. They then built a temporary stand in this, what was the northern end there. But there were seat kills everywhere for the follow spots. And it was a big argument in favour of black tracks to say, well, you can ditch all those. You never ditch them all. I've never run Dinosaurs. I did because that's a different kind of show. But in anything where you've got individual talent, I'd always have follow spots sitting out there just in case the technology doesn't function for either any number of reasons. But other than that, there was the economic argument was there, and also that I think I successfully put the case that it would make a big difference to the nature of the lighting and make it look, I hesitate to use the word more sophisticated, but it would make it have a flavour to it that you wouldn't imagine. And certainly if you don't have time to rehearse people to move with lights, then you want the lights to move with them. All the documentation, again, done on WYG. These are just some extracts, so you can just get a sense of what I was doing. Obviously, when you're doing a stadium, you can't just print the plan on AO and then say, look at that. You've got to go to extracts and things. I'd be doing that. The beauty of these things, it gives people an idea of what you're doing and where you're doing it. In stadia shows, I always go to for the efficiencies of repeating myself, so that, say, in this picture, truss A1, A2, A3 there, those trusses are all repeats, so that in terms of the supply shop, they're making many of the same thing, which makes it more efficient, easier, all of those things. And this is just giving people a sense of the layout. And those then I started issuing for each section. Interesting thing about this stadium, each span of that circular roof right around, every span was a different distance, and all these trusses are the same. And you can see there that they're all three are showing you that the spans that they're making are all different in the roof, which gave us different pickup points. And we were very restricted on our loads. I've got my truss weights up there. I've got the truss counts. I've got my extracts. I use my WYG spreadsheets internally and find doing the extracts onto these things is enormously useful when it's an appropriate way to do it like this. All my reports and instrument schedules, any of the compilation reports, I always export to Excel, which is obviously a far more universally used software, and it helps people with it, and my particular anal way of doing it. Just some shots from the thing. Noticing on this aerial shot, that's me demonstrating what the size of the beams will be when it hits somebody down on the floor. That's the same shot from below. Just to go back one, there were 90 Sharpies around there. I think it was 50 Super Sharpies and 40 Sharpie 300s. Because this large 60-metre disc of sand was used entirely for projection, so I needed some crosslight, and they seem to be the best way to get around it. These are all just useful for demonstrating to people and TV directors, for instance, what the aerial shots might be, what opportunities are going to be there that I'm providing. And again, as an internal document to show to some of the creatives, these are the colours, what are the costuming. It helps exercise. There was a sense of people standing around a small step right around that centre thing, getting focus points for that and showing the opportunities again for people for their blocking and the way they might think of the staging. Sharpies being used here notionally as potential follow lanterns, showing you that, and that's what they might look like from below. It's actually a better aerial shot than it is that. And then just to show you what was possible, this is, I hope I get this one right for you. This is us calibrating BT one evening at 4 o'clock. Now you'll see lights bumping around in this, but this is us, and we're calibrating lights at a minimum 75-meter throw on full zoom and full iris to get a small enough beam. But this will just show you what the technology.
What do you think?
Yes, they can.
Well, yes. He's
Sorry, I was chatting away there on mute. If I was not being talked at the moment, that's us turning them on and off and flipping them between beacons just to check the accuracy of the calibration.
I think I got
but you can see there we're still working on beam size and so on. But it's a very stop there. I wonder if I can just leave that and go back to my main screen. Yes, I can. Worked when the conditions were perfect and we were able to do everything for it. It was great. Unfortunately, you have to carry costume design with you. You have to carry people who won't wear the costume, don't feel like wearing it tonight, had their hair up last night, and when they come back tonight, they've got their hair down, sitting over the beacons. At the flag parade, at when the Commonwealth flag came in, between the dress rehearsal and the live to air, we had the beacons on. The flag was followed beautifully around the track, and then when they came out on the opening night, between the last time we saw it and the time we saw it that time, they'd sewn epaulets on the people carrying the flag, which made it rather difficult for the beacons. Go follow spots. This is again demonstrating that you can have beautiful shadow play. It's great sort of motif of the Australian vernacular, I suppose, and I love using it. Again, an aerial shot of dancers being picked out of a group. And if I'm going to be if this technology is going to hold up for me, I can push that. You might press on from where we were. Otherwise, I hope it'll just go on from where I paused it. It's not. Sorry if you're going to watch this. I can't move this forward, I don't think.
Yes,
No.
they can.
So bear with me on this one. I'll let the next piece, and we'll skip a piece of video which will try to catch us up. Just as a background piece of information, we had 24 beacons, 20 beacons, 24 out there, 20 cameras, 24 beacons. Battery life again was a challenge for us, doing all those sorts of things. Just to let you know, the next clip you're going to see in a moment is an extract from Bangara on the night. We literally unbagged the Sharpies at 5 minutes before live to air. Here, sorry, cutting to this, now you can see the 5 groups being picked up. Now these are dancers just largely in loincloth. They've got the beacons on their hips. the stringers on their hips. And this was a beautiful moment. These 5 groups grew choreographically out of the thing. They had a reference to it, and not something you could do with a follow spot or many. It just had a lovely flavour. And back to what I was just talking about, we unbagged the Sharpies at 5 to 8. We were live to air at 8 o'clock, and at about 7:59 and 30 seconds, we were hit by a severe storm cell, torrential rain, gale force winds. We lost over 50 of the Sharpies. We lost, I think, 11 of the 20 cameras, and people were wearing ponchos, and it was it all went dreadfully pear-shaped. And that was more than a 20% failure rate. Let me tell you, we were doing so much live programming and tap dancing our way around the problem. But this is what it could have been, and it didn't get that way, I'm afraid. But the beauty of this was we really were proving that it could be done, and I was delighted, and I look forward to the next opportunity to, on this scale, to knowing what I do now about the application of the technology is bringing all the other people with you. It's not just, the technology is great when you give it ideal conditions. I would have thought most of the time it's not ideal conditions. And you can see just how beautifully it just picked them up. We're able to blend with the rest of the thing, and then we were still working on that. I'm going to close that off, do that, go back here, and I'll bring you to, and we won't do the HLT extract because I'll save you that. Opera Australia, quickly, I'm looking at the time. Opera Australia has 2 main events. It's the main theatre stuff in the traditional proscenium arch, and Opera on the Harbour. I used a visualizer first time in 2013 for On the Harbour. We don't use tracking out on the harbour, largely because it runs for a month. You've got 2 casts and it rains, and the rain contingency varies. In some conditions, people will put on ponchos so that you can still sort of see the costume underneath, but it defeats the purpose of having anything on their shoulders or on the costumes. They have wigs that they may or may not wear. Sometimes they've even been known to perform under umbrellas. Placing the cameras is another issue. You're a big wide open space out on the water. It's an entirely purpose-built facility. So we stick with follow spots out there for all that. But visualizing, again, is just an ability. Obviously, this is Carmen, a production. An ability to just get your palettes right, work on ideas. What will that reverse sign have? Take pictures and look nice. We had a big container that used to fly. Michaela was on it, and so you can get a focus position. You can hang stuff in the air. We had a lot of fun doing that. Again, playing different and showing ideas to directors and other members of the creative group. It's quite a long time since I had a director or a designer turn up for plotting sessions. That tends to not happen so much. So I like to go in having said, this is what I'm thinking for this and that, so it helps carry them along. And there are no surprises. Doesn't mean they don't sort of look at you and say, what is that and why? But at least you can say, well, I've tried to show you. Again, experimenting with focus positions from front of house, you can see coming over the top. And then you can have a shot like that from the show itself. It was great. But when we go inside with the opera company, this is their standard rig. And it's recently been transformed into what we're calling an entirely digital rig. The whole overhead rig is now moving heads, and the what we would down here in Australia call the orchestra bar out over the pit. The advent of LED fixtures, and these are all Mac Encores, all colds, a mixture of wash and profile. or performance, I should say. And they previously you couldn't rig more than about 6 or 8 moving heads when they were discharge lanterns because they're too noisy. So imagine an entire rig of them. But now both the noise and the heat is manageable. And one of the great selling points for that whole standard rig, that overhead rig, was that the opera company, when it's in full rep, can be doing changeovers 3 times a day. And that can be 20 to 25 electricians lowering the rig, changing colours, taking them up to the 20-foot height and then running around on a genie focusing. Since that time, you just change the show file and your lights are refocused. So the argument there is an efficiency and the flexibility. It's not, we need a special there. Well, at the break, I'll put one up for you. Or I'll focus one. It's now you can do it. The other thing about technology, of course, is the more sophisticated it gets, the longer it takes to program. But we're there now. The digital project also, as a stage thing, it now also includes 10 large LED screens, 8 meters by 2.5, rigged in pairs, as you can see here, and each pair tracks. They all rotate individually and they can fly as a pair. They track independently, rotate independently, and they are constantly moving, and they're very, very bright. We run them at about 4%. But what they do when you have black tracks involved as well is they constantly get in the way of the thing. The challenge is that the cameras are incredibly masked, and we're getting very adept at handing off, changing chapters, going to different lanterns, knowing where people are and knowing what cameras we're using. We've got 14 cameras in use. We have 4 out front, 2 on the advanced bar. We have 2 each on the proscenium itself, high and low, and then we have 1 on each of the first 4 lighting bars on each end, and we go from there. Just to show you, you can see that the masking there laterally, each of those heavy grey pieces is the central point of those screens. So when they're all twisted up and down stage and then move on stage, they get in the way of the cameras, and you get very adept at telling everything to use just 3 from somewhere else. It's a real tap dance. The great thing about opera is we have brilliant queuing, and we do so much handoff. It's not funny, you know, this, that, chapter. We even had one performer came on in a coat, hung around, sat down, lay down, and then at some exasperated moment, he took his coat off and down to just a singlet. And we had to just time it so that as he took the coat off and we knew where the next stringer was, we'd change chapter, and it was seamless. It was a great moment we all used to love doing. This gives you another little insight into what with the blue panels are the screens. You can also see, this is a little preview of the ring cycle. There's a curved set of 15 screens at the rear there. You can see the rig's been pushed out on spreaders because it's a bigger theatre. But any scenery that flies, and if the panels fly in any way other than laterally across stage, I'd have to fly the lighting bars at the same time, which is also interesting for calibration of cameras and lights. Let me just run you this, which will just give you a little idea of the way the scenery moves around and the challenges. This is an animation showing what might be possible. This is not the pictures of the real thing. Kind of thing that goes on or can potentially. So you can imagine what we're doing. They can't actually now pass each other. This was an early plan where they were going to be on individual tracks because they were all going to be projection screens. But it just gives you a sense of how much moves around and the challenges in there. The costume department, the wardrobe, have been tremendously accommodating. remember again, opera often will have 2 casts. You can see the screens there turning to make boxes and so on. Great for camera, great for everything. Also, the LED moving heads also have a similar light source to the screens, which is always very handy for us. It makes it easy to you know, tone everything, if you will. But look, I'm conscious of the time. You get the idea. They're just they move around constantly, and it's half the time you're not doing lighting, you're doing traffic, you know, warden stuff. But I'll just go back to the main screen, and again, one of the I will just take a moment to say here at the Opera Company how you everybody will have their own way of when they cue a Blacktracks cue. In this particular synopsis, I'll line them up where I can with a lighting cue, but we'll keep the BTQ stack separate so that they're triggered individually. Sometimes the programmers get annoyed because if they're triggering AV at the same time, they've got to push 3 buttons. But the difficulty is you can't put them, well, I don't believe you should put them in the main cue stack, because when you have a change of cast, or you might just be changing something within from one rehearsal to the next, you know, some of the stage business changes. If the BTQ is pushed into the main cue stack and then you need to move it, you've got a whole bunch of renumbering and insertions to do, which may or may not confuse stage management. So I prefer to keep them a separate trigger. But they invariably work. We try not to use too much automation. As I say, we try to zones and things might work with the first cast, but you don't get to rehearse the second cast well enough for them to understand what zones are. And invariably, somebody will walk up and hover at the edge of a zone, and the technology will try to get itself confused and succeed. This is AIDA. You can see that the size of these screens, and particularly like this shot, that image was very useful in that it tailed off at the base so that it gave us a stage picture, and I was able to light the formers also with drifting off to black, so they literally looked like they were of the image and belonged in it rather than standing in front of it, which is always a challenge with screens. Again, all this is done with just digital imagery, those same moving screens. This is Annabellina, which was 2018. Yeah, we didn't do 2019. Something happened. No, 2019. I'm sorry, it was 2020. Something happened, wasn't it? You can see the screens there are in the air. I've got shin busters cutting in underneath because I've lost some lighting bars. The main protagonist there, King Henry, he came on for one glorious scene wearing this beautiful cloak. He's got the beacons and the stringers up on his shoulders, and for some reason in the scene he got carried away and decided he wanted to take his cloak off, so he flung it down on the floor, and for the next 4.5 minutes our principal singer was in the dark and his cloak was a beautifully lit lump on the floor. But then that's humans, isn't it? Again, Blacktracks in action. Very happy with it. This is Whiteley, where we had very spare staging and lots of screens and being able to just pick people up. And we had a double revolve. And what I was most using Blacktracks for or pursuing was to bring scenery and people, whole scenes that was very episodic and very filmic. So a scene might start, you know, upstage right, facing upstage and becoming around on the revolve, and I could actually bring the scene around with the light coming around. Although if your light's not on dead center, the arc of the turn of the revolve is not the same as you, because you have to keep changing chapters and changing things. And as you come around a screen, you've got to hand off to a light in front. But a lot of fun. We had some interactive AV as well. this whole scene came around from upstage left. I had to bring it around, and Brett up there, Brett Whiteley, he had to come around and end up in another set of lights so that he sat and just popped out in difference to the others and grew. So it didn't matter whether the chairs were exactly right. Often stage management will set the chairs, the performers get on the chairs and move them slightly. It's not an exact science. This bath, Brett came around clockwise from upstage left. The bath came around anti-clockwise from upstage right. And the two scenes came together, came around those center screens that you can see. They're partially flying in at that point, and we handed off to do it. And then you can just paint and sculpt when you get there. Great fun. Always good lighting someone behind a screen in front of a screen. And then if I just show you this last one up, I hope, and then you'll be pleased to know I'll happily take questions, should they. We'll see where we're at. Oh, we're going to start again, are we? I may let that run. Nicholas, if there are any questions, because this, I can't jump this, if there are any questions I could answer while we just get to the last little bit of video of Whiteley, just to fill in the time, because this is endlessly fascinating watching this.
Absolutely. We do have some fresh graduate students that are interested in lighting design technology and want to create some amazing design for entertainment, such as some of these examples that you have been showing. And they're just asking for your professional advice into perhaps what are some software or applications that they should learn to further advance their skills.
Obviously, your drawing, your documentation is vital. Often the first impression people will make of you as a working designer in the industry is they will assess you by your paperwork. So the better your paperwork looks and is presented, and the logic behind it. So absolutely knowing your way around whichever your preferred CAD software is better. I think, look, I've never been someone who programs my own shows. I've always, I like the relationship with a programmer, and it's their skill set that you want. Just cutting in, there's, this is Whiteley in some sort of little bit of, just to give you an idea of some of the interactions and the screens. It was, there's the revolve actually going. It was, you need to understand the technology around you, so that, for instance, if I know that a programmer is trying to snow me by telling me, no, I can't do that, or it can't be done, I need to know enough about the console to know I'm being snowed. And the same with black tracks. I need to know enough about it intuitively and technically, so that when I ask it to do something, I'm either not making a fool of myself, or I know that I'm asking something that can be done, and whether the problem is the technology or the application of it by people, or is it too difficult? You know, you owe it to all the people you work with to know enough about all the bits that you're proposing to use to be able to speak in a manner that says, I'm not asking for something unreasonable. I'm not being silly or naive. By all means, push the envelope. And also, one of the great things to know as a young designer is know when to not pursue something. All young designers want to show as much as they can of everything they can do, but there are times when if you've got precious little time, you've got to have a priority system where, if that's a great effect, I know if I could get it right, it'd be brilliant, but I don't have 40 minutes to program it. And you've got to know when to let go of certain things. But you've just got to be familiar with the software that you're going to use. I'm familiar with WYG, I'm familiar with BlackTrax. I've tried some other technologies, not necessarily by choice, but I've tried them. And I would come back to, for my application, I'd come back to BlackTrax and WYG. I know others use, there's other visualization softwares out there. A lot of programmers come in and say, why don't we just use the visualizer in the console, which is fine up to a point, depending on which console it is, but it doesn't do the documentation. And I like to use the single suite where I've got everything right there. You know, it's technologies, much as the boffins might want to make it an exact science, the application is anything but. Technology is simply there to serve the performance. It's not there, it's a tool. It's not the point of everything. And hopefully, as we go on and into the future, there'll be other things about the technology that start rearing their head.
Absolutely. And speaking of these technology, what does the future hold for all of these technologies, such as tracking, hold in the future for you?
Well, I would hope that they become more sophisticated. Not that they're not, but you know, if technology doesn't evolve with its application in the real world and hear and learn from the way it's used, then you know the company that's doing it, you know, is just sitting still, I guess. But one of the things for me, you want the technology is only as good as the people who are going to apply it and use it and deploy it. Whether it's a designer using it, you know, cleverly or thinking of clever ways to use it, or whether it's the technical people who are actually charged with making it do these things that the designer would like to have happen in the most absurd of circumstances. I would hope, Nicholas, that there's better AI or machine learning, so that some of the things, so it becomes more inexact, if you will. You know, live theatre is an inexact, you know, fluffy thing, and I'd like there to be more leeway and you know, ability to say this isn't ideal, but I've learned that under these circumstances I can ignore that and that thing trying to tell me this or that. Now, whether that's a silly ask, or whether, which is perhaps a way, when you're doing something in a show that repeats and repeats and repeats, which tours do, and all of those things. Well, yes, BlackTrax is great. It responds specifically to the performer. So whether the performer changes things, their position, it'll just follow on. But there will be aspects in other theatre presentations where pretty much the same thing happens at every performance, and you'd like perhaps the ability for the software to learn that at this point I go into this mode. You know, it's very difficult to ask the technology to be exact at some points and not at others. I mean, I know in BlackTrax we have predictive technology. If some, you know, for ice skaters and dancing and so on, it can say this is the arc I'm following, and I'll press ahead. But often when people are standing still, we come across problems because the slightest movement in the centroid, they think, and you can, of course, you can adjust its sensitivity, but that's I think that's dialing up or down a volume pot, if you will. I'd like to think that there'd be machine learning or better AI being able to be brought to bear on stuff. Self-calibration, I'd love to think would be something we could perform. In the opera company, we can put the lighting bars literally right back on their marks, and the cameras are pretty sound, you know, within reason. The lanterns, not necessarily. One of the problems out in a stadium application is that they bring if you've got the cameras on the trusses, you've got a major problem because the trusses tend to move around a bit in the wind. With all the will in the world, they do. But with the cameras fixed, you're always bringing the trusses in to do maintenance on the lanterns, so that when you go back up, if you brought 7 trusses in, you might have 20 lanterns you've got to recalibrate. And if you're out on a 5-acre field, that's a lot of walking around. So it's a matter of, I would like to think there might be a way of getting a self-calibrating or a self-writing mechanism in some way that says I can check these other things to see where I am and adjust. Would be enormously useful. And redundancies. Not everybody can afford 2 beacons or things. Whether you can build a dual pack that if a beacon fails or is switched on, or whether you can switch on a beacon by remote, some way of being able to overcome the loss of the power source. Those sorts of things. Just making them more the technology less. I work when it's perfect. I'm looking for stuff that works when it's not, which is mostly where I work.
Yeah, you do bring up a lot of great points in what the future holds for tracking technology. And as a longtime WYG user yourself, you are aware of how CAS as a company is constantly improving, and we do pride ourselves in listening to our customers for feedback. And WYG and Blacktracks is and will continue to improve over the years as technology allows us to move forward. So absolutely a lot of great points from you, John.
Oh, look, and that's one of the things that kept me with the company over the years is the support, the development, and the genuine interest in the experience out at the field. And I've had long talks with various people at the company who do respond. It's an organisation that's been around. It's proven its longevity. It's there, and it's not afraid of difficult circumstances. In fact, it kind of wants to be challenged, which I love.
So thank you, John. Your insight and your productions you've highlighted today, I've no doubt they've got viewers thinking, and they've had an insight that they wouldn't have otherwise had into your way of working. And also thank you to Nicholas for your moderation of today's webinar. If you did enjoy today's webinar or have any feedback, sorry, John.
No, I was just going to say, thanks everybody for hanging in there. I know I went long. I threatened to do so, so I've been true to that. But thank you. It's been great. I hope you got something from it.
No doubt that everybody has. I was just going to say, actually, if anybody has any feedback for John or the team here at CAST, please do let us know through the feedback form you'll shortly receive via email. And if you wish to find out more about Blacktracks or WYG, there's more information on our website, www.cast-soft.com. On the website, you can find details of all of our training courses and also view the catalogue of our webinars. Through the website as well, you can download a demo version of WYG and actually try the software out for yourself. Now, talking of webinars, if you enjoyed today, please do join us for our next webinar on Tuesday, the 11th of August. The forthcoming release of WYG R45 is the focus of our next webinar, and we'll be highlighting the new features that you really should know about. You can register for the WYG webinar through our website or the link contained in the email you receive later today. So on behalf of the entire team at CAST, John, Nicholas, thank you very much for the webinar today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Do stay safe, and we look forward to you joining us again soon.